Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be another installment of my eyeshadow palette week that I've been doing here in April. It's the final one. Sad. But I wanted to end it on a high note, and today we are going to be talking about my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. So let's get cracking. Welcome if you're new here, welcome if you're a returning visitor. Thank you so very much for being here today. In case you don't know what this channel is about, normally I love chatting about eyeshadow palettes, and I felt that I was sort of letting you guys down a little bit on that promise as I was doing declutter videos in March. So I decided to come back in full force in April and chat a little bit more about eyeshadow palettes because it's just my favorite thing. I love trying out Essence and Catrice products as well, but I also like getting the use out of my makeup and going back to old favorites. And that factors into how I've organized the video for you today. Today we're going to be talking about my top 15 all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. And when I say all-time favorite, I mean all-time favorite, because I have found that I have eyeshadow palettes that I would still think of as favorites that have stood the test of time for me, that I still hold very near and dear to my heart, but that were sadly either limited edition or that have since been discontinued. So I'm going to be breaking this video into 3 parts: a top 15 all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes with palettes you can still get, then my top 10 favorite discontinued palettes that are still on this list, but I cannot recommend them. So I'm going to breeze you through it, and I know that my OG subscribers will know exactly what's going to appear in that top 10. And then towards the end of the video, I'm going to chat about 5 eyeshadow palettes that are currently on my to try pile that I'm predicting could make it onto this list. Now you should know that when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, I have pretty expensive taste. So a lot of the things that I have for you are indie or more high-end / luxury brands. But I do really enjoy if I find really good eyeshadows at the drugstore. And that's why these little guys from Catrice definitely need to get a mention here. These are the 5-in-a-box eyeshadow palettes, and these are the 4 that I decided to keep around in my collection. There are 6 of these in total, but I don't like all of the color stories for myself, to be quite fair. And I'm sort of entering this as like one entry, even though there are 4 palettes here, so that if you like just the look of one of these, that you know that there's something for everyone here. But I really like all 4 of these, and it also includes a couple of things that are a bit not so typical for my preferences. So the first one here is Soft Rose Look, which you'll see, I mean, these like mauvey rosy tones, I'm all about it. The one that's the most atypical is Warm Spice Look, because this is a warm tone palette. I'm usually not a fan of warm tones, but this is really lovely. And then for something a bit more trendy, Catrice is usually not that up on like trends or anything, but they also do the Vivid Burgundy look. And this one is like a really good, like, well, is it truly burgundy? Not per se, but it's also more warm tone leaning. And then you get this really interesting like rose gold shimmer in here, which I like. And then my favorite of the 4 is Modern Smoky Look. This has been discontinued already where I live. I don't have that many backups in my makeup collection, but this I bought another one from before they discontinued it because it's got really nice taupey shades and this really nice steely blue. And that's what I love about them. These have excellent quality. They look a little bit like a Natascha Denona mini palette, which I appreciate, but these only retail for like what? €4 at the drugstore. These are really, really lovely quality, and they definitely deserve a spot on my all-time favorite eyeshadow palette list. Now, one OG palette that has made its way in my top 15 list for years that is still available is the Lorac Pro 3. You knew I was going to mention this. I have mentioned this many times before, but for someone with fair skin, I really struggled finding neutral tone palettes that allowed me to use every single shade. And that was until this was released, because this was the first neutral palette I tried that on my fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone really worked from start to finish. A lot of neutral palettes that get a lot of hype on YouTube beauty community are just a little bit too dark or saturated and everything starts looking like I was punched in the face. But with this, I feel I can get very distinct looks. This is not a palette for you if you have a much darker skin tone than I do, because it's just not going to work. I love the shimmer formula in here. I really like the mattes. You get a bit of warmth, but there's also quite a lot of cool tones in here, which is why this works. It's a really good smack in the middle neutral palette for me, and that's why this one always makes it onto this list, and they still sell this. So there's going to be a lot of neutral palettes here because that's really where my heart lies. However, in terms of neutrals, I have some slightly different preferences. And again, warm tones aren't usually my jam. But this guy, the Nabla Cutie palette in Analogue, was outstanding. This worked really well for me on my fair skin, especially because these darker tones that you get in here seem to have a little bit more of a cooler undertone, which works really well for me. I do get some really good saturated warm tones, but on me, even though they are oranges, they didn't really pull very weirdly on me. The reddish tones that these shades have really pop through, and also these two lighter shimmers that it has worked quite well on me. The gold isn't too stark of a yellow tone gold, and this is a really nice peachy tone duochrome. So if I had to pick my favorite warm tone palette, then this was it. And also when I ranked all of my warm tone palettes, this made it at the top of that list as well, because it's just one that I feel is outstanding. And I don't really need that many warm tones, which is why this one, together with the Catrice Warm Spice look from the 5 in a Box collection, is actually all I need when it comes to warm tones. So another neutral palette that I wanted to feature at the start here is one that is a quite recent discovery for me. This is the Meesha Cosmetics The Fawn palette, and I was so taken with this once I tried it. And I don't think many people rave about this because Meesha Cosmetics is a small UK-based indie brand, and they got a bit of hype when they first launched and they were sending out some PR to people, but it seems like people have really forgotten about this brand, and I just wanted to give them a shout out here. For me, this Nabla side by side wasn't a perfect neutral tone palette. Instead, I have found that the shades in the Meesha The Fawn are what I had hoped the Nabla side by side could give me. So if I had to go for a warm, well, a neutral tone palette with these like reddish tones that the Nabla has as well, with some like grayish cool tones and then some neutral browns and some peachy shades, then this is a 12 pen color story that I feel is much more curated than the Nabla and that I just love, especially this shade here called Water Reflections. It is absolutely stunning. You only get 5 shimmers in here, which, and these two are perhaps a little bit samey, but this is just one, if I think of a neutral palette that is really smack in the middle neutral, but that is a little bit more saturated and gives me a little bit more oomph than the Lorac does, then this is definitely the palette that really comes to mind for me. So that's why this had to make an appearance in my top 15 all-time favorite palettes. The next part of this top 15 is going to focus around more colorful things. So I've really decided that I do like colorful shadow, don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I reach for on the daily. I'm wearing something a little bit more colorful today, but that can still be very wearable for work, and that's how I like to wear color. I don't really go in with like very graphic eyeliner looks or anything like that. So for me, I've selected like 4 of my favorite colorful eyeshadows or eyeshadow palettes, I should say, that I feel really give me, like if I have to pick my top 10 favorite, 15 favorite palettes, and I had to do away with the rest of my collection, then these were the only ones that I would really keep around. So for purples, I would go for the Violette Étendue from Viseart. This is one of my favorite purple palettes simply because it does have some neutrals, but they all pull purple in their undertone. So I feel they work really well with the purples you get in here. You can very nicely use these to tone down some of these purples to make them look more wearable and perfect for every day. But you do get enough color here as well that if you want to go for a bold purple look, you can. So that's why this is my favorite purple palette of choice. You get some really lovely shimmers in here. This shade especially I love. And then you just get this really nice bright pop, some mauve tones. I just love this guy. And I also really like the quality of this too. Viseart has really grown on me. It was a brand I wasn't really into at first, but especially since they've been putting out these kind of palettes, I've really fallen in love with the brand. I think that a good rainbow palette deserves a place on this list for sure, because you just get a lot of shades that you can play around with. But my favorite rainbow palette for years has been this guy, the slush palette from September Rose Cosmetics. This palette, just for my fair skin and brights, it's exactly what I need. And the reason why this works is because it is on the brighter, lighter side. You get some pops of neon in here. You do get a couple of shimmers, which I appreciate. A lot of rainbow palettes are full on matte, and I don't love matte palettes, so I appreciate that at least each column has a shimmer. That's lovely about this one too. And I feel that I could stick to the columns and like get an all blue look or like an all orange look if that's what I'm going for. But I can also mix and match it, and then this is the perfect palette for sunset eyes. And if you see the icon of my YouTube channel, the palette I use to create the look in that little icon close-up is this guy. So it had to get a mention. But I also really love my grungy jewel tones, and I was thinking, yeah, if there's one jewel tone palette that really springs to mind as one of my favorites, it's the Arcana from Shroud Cosmetics. This is a US-based indie brand, so it may be a little bit harder to get, and it doesn't have a lot of light shades, but really, truth be told, I was able to work with this just fine. Of course, everything you're gonna do with this is going to look very dark and grungy, but that's what I love about this palette. Again, undertones here are lovely for my skin tone. I really love the green. I love this blue shimmer here, this murky purpley mauve shade. This is a great crease shade for me. And instead of this having a black, which you might expect, the deepest shade you get is a dark green. So I feel you can nicely mix and match. It's got a teal, which I love. And then we have a really nice gold here that has also a bit of a green undertone. And then you just get some warm tones to round out the palette. And these are more cranberry leaning rather than orange, which is why for me, if I have to go warm tones, then berries probably work best on me. Berries and mustards are usually best instead of like very orange tone things. But yeah, this I feel has the best of both worlds. And in terms of a grungy color story that with perfect jewel tones, this is one of my favorites in my collection. But I also like a pop of brightness, and the bright shades I really like wearing are blues and greens. And to me, in my brain, there is only one blue-green palette that really stands out to me, and that's the Ace Beauté Oceanic. So far, nothing has beaten this from its top spot. I've tried other blue-green palettes so far, either with a mix or that are just a full-on blue or a full-on green palette. But I think this 15-pan color story, this just gives me everything I would need. So you do get a really nice deep navy, you get your teals in here, you get some really nice bright pops of blue. And what I love about this palette is that all those blue tones go together really nicely, as well as those brighter and more grungy, murky greens. So I feel that this is a really good one if you just want to mix and match. And in terms of blue-green color story, it just doesn't get any better than this. I really like the quality of mine, but since I have bought this, the brand has updated their formula and they now have a even better formula, I've been told. I'm very curious to see if that's the case, but yeah, this is a lovely palette. And if I had to go for blue-greens, this would be the one. But let's bring this program back to, I'm pretty sure, what you might expect here. So I really like rosy mauve tones, and in the past year, 2 palettes have been released that really stole my heart. And I have said this in the past, but I feel that these 2 palettes replace one of my favorites that you will see in a minute. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about the Natascha Denona Retro and Huda Beauty Rose Quartz. So both of these I feel do something differently for me, which is why they're on the list. The Natascha Denona Retro, let's chat about that. I feel is perfect for mauve tones with a pop of something like warm tone rose, like these almost peachy shades you get here. I love the textures you get in here with these like more flaky shimmers that are in here. An excellent crease shade. Also this one I love. And you can pull this more plummy if you'd like to, but you don't have to, because you can also pull it into more of a taupe direction with this. It's got a really nice dark brown, so it just has a lot of shades that I really, really love. I really like the quality of the Natascha Denona palettes, especially these midi-sized ones. I really like the quality of them for the price point that you pay. I really like how you can even take out the shades if you were so inclined. So yeah, this in terms of like a good everyday palette with a pop of something, but that is very much in a color story that suits my undertone, the Natascha Denona Retro is definitely one I love. The Rose Quartz, however, is of a slightly different quality, I feel, not in terms of like formula quality, but in terms of what this color story brings me. Everything in here is perhaps a little bit more pink toned rather than the plummy undertones we get in the Natascha Denona. I really liked some of the shimmers in here, especially the ones here at the top. The neutrally shimmers over here I wasn't too impressed with. I felt that they needed a lot of building, but I really like how this is a nice play. I can pull in the pinks if I really want to add some vibrancy, but I can, like, if you just stick to this corner over here, you just have a really great everyday look. You have a bit of warmth just to blend those things in, and then you can just pop something like this all over it to make it like a little bit more sparkly and fun if that's what you're looking for. I get some really nice crease shades here as well that will help me with blending things out. So overall, the Rose Quartz from Huda Beauty, definitely the minute I spotted this, I knew I was going to love it, and it didn't disappoint. Yes, I had a couple of issues with this when I first tried it, in terms of like some of the shimmers not working the way I'd want it to, which is why I prefer the shimmer formula in the Natascha Denona. But I feel that with this, I can get more versatility, and with the Natascha Denona, I feel I can get more everyday things, if that makes sense. But we all know where my heart truly lies, and that's with the cool tones. And that's why I have quite a few of those on my top 15 list, because ultimately, if I have to pick a shade, it's going to be cool tone. And I don't think there is any other example of a good cool tone palette than the Pat McGrath Mothership 1 Subliminal palette. So this is just what the box looks like. I keep these in the box so that I can actually tell them apart. But this is what the palette looks like. We get some really nice taupes, again a little bit more of like a plummy mauve going on here, and then these really fun like shimmery shades. We get a pop of blue that you can use to, you know, make something a little bit more date night appropriate or just a bit more edgy. This really nice yellow tone gold that isn't too like strong of a yellow. It's very soft and sort of toned down. It's got a lot of white running through it, and then these two shimmers just really transform the entire palette. This darker shade isn't necessarily much of a black, it's more of like a charcoal gray shade, which works for me personally. I'm not a big fan of blacks in palettes, so that's why this is perfect for me. That's about as deep as I would go. It just has all the shades that I would want in terms of cool tones, and you get some fun sparkly things, so you can make this very everyday appropriate, but you can also have some fun with it, and that's why the Pat McGrath one had to go into this top 15. But I also wanted to chat to you about some more affordable things, and I knew I had to put this in, of course, because it's one of my favorite cool tone palettes. But that's taupe from Colourpop. Is this still around? I'm not sure. But this is definitely like perfect. Like this has my name written all over it. I get exactly the amount of mattes to shimmer ratio that I like. I could have done with one more shimmer perhaps. I think the top row of mattes is perhaps a little bit too samey. But yeah, this is lovely. This is one of the very few Colourpop palettes that I've kept as is, that I didn't pull shades from or mixed and matched it with other palettes that I own from them, because that's what ended up happening to a lot of my monochromatic palettes from Colourpop, not gonna lie. But this palette from Colourpop is just such a good staple. And then we have the Kokosanka, and this is a palette from Glamshop. And this is again a brand that I have only tried last year, so they are quite new to me. But I was like, I just have such fun memories of trying this eyeshadow palette. And I know that for people in Europe, like me, it can be very difficult to get your hands on something like Colourpop. But I think that if you don't want to import Colourpop to the EU, if that's too expensive for you, then definitely check out Glamshop, because they are a Polish brand, so you would not have to pay for any customs for this for sure. And this palette retails for, I think, 19, 20 euros or so I paid for this. So I think that that's a pretty good deal, and it has really, really lovely quality. I think the color story is quite comparable, but it has a little bit more interest because we get this like blue brown sort of shifty shade in the middle. In here, we get 5 mattes and 4 shimmers, and also the mattes and the shimmers really don't have too much overlap. I feel that the Colourpop is perhaps a little bit more muted down, and this is more like the grungy sister of the Colourpop one. And as you'll see in a minute, I like a bit of cool tone grunge. So yeah, the Colourpop, that's taupe, and the Kokosanka from Glamshop both had to be on here, because even though they look very similarly in the pan, they do give me something differently. Speaking of cool tone grunge, I cannot leave off the Mary Jane from Melt. I know that this is not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, when I tried this, I was just smitten the minute I tried it. I thought it was going to be too dark for me when this was released. I was like, oh, not sure. But this over here and also this over here make for great crease shades for me. Both of them actually. I get just enough mattes, just enough shimmers really to have a bit of fun. We get some green tone taupes, and those can be really hard to come by, but I love a green tone taupe. So that's why this palette has a bit of an special place in my heart. And if I want to go for that smoky eye, this is the one. And finally, my last palette from the top 15, Natascha Denona Glam. This is a replacement as well for some of the palettes that I've been loving for years. I actually put this palette side by side with the Urban Decay Naked 2 because that's the palette I'm referencing here, and I feel I can do very similar looks with it, which is why I've kept some of my old Urban Decay things from the list and I've replaced it with new things because that's just the way things go. But the Glam is just such a good palette. I get all the cool tone neutrals I need. Really, could I do away with all of the cool tone stuff I've shown you right now and just keep this? Probably, but for me, something that's really shifted in my makeup preferences is that I'm currently really looking for textures. So that's where the Melt comes in, that's where the Pat McGrath comes in, that's where the Glamshop comes in. So where the Colourpop and also the Natascha Denona are your like everyday cool tone neutral palettes, I do really appreciate a bit of texture and just something fun to play with, and that's where the other three palettes really come in. So that's why the top 15, we have 5 cool tone palettes, a couple of rosy things, some colorful bits, and then my favorite warm toned, affordable, and like very smack down the middle neutral things. So those were the top 15 palettes that I know you can still get your hands on, but I also wanted to share 10 palettes with you that may be more difficult to find, either because they have been discontinued, or they were limited edition, or they are just a little bit older. Doesn't mean I don't still enjoy these, and that's why I just wanted to breeze through these, because a lot of people already see these coming. I already mentioned Urban Decay Naked 2. This, till this day, I go back to this all the time. I have dents in this. I hope to hit pan on it, and this is my other only palette that I have a backup from. So it needs a mention. Urban Decay Naked 3, not technically discontinued yet, but for me, the Rose Quartz and the Retro from Natascha Denona, that's the two palettes that have really replaced this one for me. I still love this till this day, but also the Urban Decay Naked Mini 3 that they came out with, I feel replaces this for me. So does this mean I don't like this anymore? No, I still love a couple of these shades for sure. I will go back to this time and time again because I just love this. It's such a good staple palette for me. Every shade works on me, and I just love it. But by now, because I have the other two palettes, this is one that I've taken off my list of palettes I need to buy a backup of if they discontinue it. Something that's definitely no longer around, Too Faced White Chocolate Bar. Another one that I love to go back to. I love reaching for this in the wintertime. And I really hope to be able to get around to sort of trying all of the new things that I brought in the next couple of months, so that in the second half of this year, I can start an eyeshadow palette series where I can go back to old favorites like this. That's really the aim of me doing 10 palette reviews videos every single month now, just to sort of make sure I get through the new stuff and I can really go back to the old stuff because I love these things. Is this still around? I keep people saying that the Natascha Denona Gold has been discontinued, and then I see people saying like, oh no, I was able to find it still. Not sure what's going on there. This is what mine looks like. It has a shade from the Lila in the middle because I didn't like the gold shade. Too yellow toned for my liking. This way, it suits my taste a lot better. We've got some mustardiness in here, and then the teals, and then these shades as well, and especially this shade Kava I love. So this is another one of those palettes where I'm like, I need to go back to you. Oh, like these 10 palettes that I'm showing you right now, like the minute I go through all of the new things that I've bought in recent months, the minute I get through that, or if I start to, like, if I have to slow down 10 palette review videos because I'm running out of new things, I'm going to rope in these like ASAP. I just know. Juvia's Place a Tribe. No longer available. If you like this color story and you can get your hands on OPV's Tropical Dreams, you can get the exact same thing with twice the amount of shades. So the color stories definitely still exist, but you need to look into OPV Beauty's Tropical Dreams palette. My favorite BH palette. They didn't bring this one back before what's even going on with them? I don't know. But the Love in London. such a good one. They discontinued it like after 6 months of releasing this, I think. So that one was around for just a hot minute. Same thing for this. I was like, yeah, I do really like this. The Club Nebula and Angelica Nukvist. Like, if this were like a permanent collection palette, this might have ended up in the top 15 over the Arcana. Because I feel I can do also like grungy jewel tone kind of looks with this. And I feel that this has a lot more blend shades for me. So in terms of like perfect for me, this is one I truly covet. So that's why it had to be in this pile of mentions. One of my favorite palettes for spring, the Nabla Soul Blooming, sadly discontinues. I mean, it's got the periwinkles, man. I love taupe, periwinkle, and teal. Those are my 3 favorite eyeshadow shades, in case you are wondering, which is why this one from Nabla always gets an honorable mention here. I was telling you about the Mary Jane being perfect for smoky eyes, but really my favorite smoky eye palette is the grungy tones in the Merte, which of course everybody's very sad was discontinued, but especially like these navy tones. Oh, that with a smoky eye, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I really love these tones, really love these shades. This is such a perfect palette. I wish they were to do something like this again. And finally, I told you I really like mustard tones on me. Blanc Fusion. It's not that mustard, perhaps. It's a bit more like cool tone neutrals and then some yellows, but in my brain this has always worked very similarly for me as the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette does. Like, this is the more cool tone version of it. So this is a great cool tone color story. Sadly, Zoeva has discontinued all of their chocolate bar style palettes over some other neutral tone palettes that I'm still making my mind up about whether I like them or not. But I have kept around a lot of my OG Zoeva palettes because I love the formula. I love those color stories. They're all nicely muted and easy for everyday looks that I prefer. So that's why I also had to give a shout out to this. So those were the honorable mentions, and then just because I predict that I'm gonna love these things. So I just wanted to briefly mention the Blend Buddy Cosmetics The Dollhouse. The minute I saw this on Instagram, I was like, yep, you're gonna be something I have to try. The only thing I wish this palette had, instead of this blue, that it had a taupe shimmer, then this would have been perfect for me. Because I get this whole row of like taupiness and then it stops there. Like, what's up with that? I need a taupe. But other than that, it looks really stunning. Another palette that's just in with me is the Lore from Unearthly Cosmetics, previously known as Alien Cosmetics. And these shimmers, like, that's why I got the palette. I'm hoping I'm gonna love this. Even though it's got those warm tone mattes, I'm predicting that I'm going to love the shimmer formula in here, especially that tealy turquoise in the middle. You know what I'm all about. Another one that I bought at the end of 2021 and I haven't tried it yet. It's going to be, I think, on my to try pile next month. But this guy, the Viseart Kashmiri Étendu. Oh, this, I wasn't going to buy it at first because I thought it was going to be very warm toned. And then I spotted that this actually has quite a lot of cool tones, and really you only get like 2 warm tones. So if you cover this up, it's like mauve tones, cool tone neutrals. Love it. And I love the Viseart formula, so I know I'm going to love it. This one from Kaleidos, the Cold Brew. I mean, cool tone browns with a really, really intense shimmer. Who am I? Like, I need to stick to character, of course. And finally, I'm predicting, and this is actually, by the time you're seeing this video, I think I will have already tried it because I'm pre-filming this. But the Pat McGrath, this is the box it comes in. What's this called? I always mess up the name. The Venus in Fleurs Look Squat in Voyeuristic Vixen, which when I first spotted this, I wasn't too sure, but something is telling me I'm going to love this. Like, this together with the Analogue from Nabla, I think it's going to be a match made in heaven. We get 3 shimmers and just 1 matte. So there you have it. That's my entire list of my top 10 favorite all-time eyeshadow palettes that you can still buy, my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes that you can no longer buy, and 5, well, they're not favorite yet, but I predict that they will be, because I think that if I were to do this video again a year down the line, that maybe I need to just update this to a top 25 and so I can include all the things. But yeah, that's sort of what we're doing here. I really hope to be able to, in the future, whenever I do a 10 palette review, to sort of make it a 50-50 of new palettes, but also some older palettes, because my plan, that's sort of that was the plan this year, to try and bring in fewer new things so I have time to go back to old stuff. That's the plan. Fingers crossed it's going to work out. So if you would like to stay tuned for more as I churn out more videos. I normally make 3 videos a week, so I hope you really would like to stick around for seeing me chat about eyeshadow palettes. Every single year in August, I do a full month dedicated to eyeshadow palettes. So then every single video I post that month is eyeshadow palette related. So I hope you would like to come back for more at a later date. For now, please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. That would greatly help out my channel. I post several times a week, and I hope you would like to stay tuned for more. Subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.